Okay, looks like we are live on LinkedIn once again for our third day of the Credit Captains Conference 2022. And we are very excited today to have some new faces. We are very excited today to have some new folks join us on the Hayako program. And again, this is the Credit Captains Conference 2022. And today's event is All Hands on Deck, SWAT Team Approach to Financial Risk Management. And I have to clarify, we had some discussion about what are we talking about with the SWAT team? No, it's not SWOT, Strengths, Weakness, Opportunities, and Threats. It's actually SWAT, like the SWAT team, the show from the 70s. And yes, there actually is a theme song from that show. So anyway, so the idea is how can you get all departments in your company to pull together to actually be successful in credit? All right, so it looks like we've got a few folks joining us. We're live on LinkedIn, and we've got some folks that are joining our Zoom webinar. Looks like we've got Andy. Hi, Andy. And Patty Peterson, Stacy. Fantastic. Great to have you guys here. Looks like we've got some few more folks coming in. And we've got about 4 minutes until we actually hit the top of the hour. And so how's everybody doing today? You guys ready to roll for this fantastic session?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Great. Jeff, we're excited to have you involved in this. And Pam, what happened to your fabulous Hawaii background?
Bob didn't like it. He said I was fading out. So
Oh.
I switched it. Now you get to see my walk station that I walk on all day long. That's right.
I think
So-
people might be equally as envious of that because I know a lot of people trying to get that.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I walk 8 to 10 miles every day because you don't even notice it when you're working. You just keep on walking.
It's amazing.
It's great.
Great way to do it.
It is. Get my steps
New
in.
Christmas list item.
Yes. Yeah, and this one is 12 years old. They're a lot cheaper now than when I bought that one.
Well, see, everybody listening's already learned something.
There you go.
That's right. We're chock full of information every time we do these, for sure. We got a few more folks coming on board. We've got a couple minutes to go before we start. So I talked about the weather too much last time, but we have a couple minutes and I don't want to say anything fascinating until we really start. So Pam, how's the weather up there?
In Minnesota, it's a nice day. It's probably in the mid 70s. I think this is the perfect weather, the fall weather, which is why I'm here and not in our Hawaii house. I'd rather be here in the fall. It's beautiful. You can ask me in a couple of months, Michelle, and I will be back in the office.
Yeah, I can't tell you how jealous you make me every time I see these posts of you in Hawaii at the beach, at the restaurants, in the high-rise condo. I'm like, yeah, that's Pam's living the good life. That's what I need to be doing.
I don't show you the real life, which is work, work, and more work. I show you the few hours I get off. It is nice to be done working, though, by noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then, we start at 4 in the morning, but then we have all afternoon. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Wow, fantastic. And Jeff, you're in Arizona, right?
Yeah, so our corporate headquarters is downtown Chicago, but I'm physically located in Scottsdale. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, good move.
Same. Yeah, and weather here is actually now it's starting to turn. It's starting to get really nice. The nights are cooling down, and the days are not as bad. It's 85 now, where compared to maybe like 110. But I'm not complaining. I'll take the heat over Chicago winters that I'm so used to.
Oh my God. Yeah. Do they make you like come up to headquarters for meetings when it's snowing?
I don't know that it depends. It depends on my performance for the month. If I come in with good KPIs, they're going to let me stay here. If not, they're kind of accumulating and waiting for December, January to
That's
bring me back in.
incentive. That is-
Exactly. That's the bonus program right there.
Yeah, for sure. Geez. Yeah, Chicago in the winter, brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah. You get used
don't
to
know.
it kind of, but then actually when you're out of it for a year, you're like, yeah, I don't know that I want to do this ever again.
No, yeah.
Actually quite balmy compared to Minnesota. I lived in Chicago too.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. We'd be wearing shorts if it were that warm in Minnesota in the wintertime.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
That
you
is
guys are
true.
hard.
I've spent plenty of time up there too, so I would agree with you. On most days, I would agree with you.
I arrived in St. Paul one time, and the cab driver, it was 10 degrees. Cab driver, I said, God, it is so cold. You know, we're having a warming trend.
A warming
was
trend.
up there.
Oh my gosh.
A warming trend.
That's for sure.
I'm a SoCal guy. Anything below 70, we wear sweaters.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, we just hit the top of the hour and we've got a few more folks that have joined us, and looks like we'll be ready to get started here. And oh yeah, poor Kim Howard, who's in San Diego. She's like, yeah, the winter is brutal in San Diego. Yeah,
Oh,
Kim,
man.
we feel your pain.
Yeah. Poor thing, poor thing.
Okay, well, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us again today. This is day 3 of our Credit Captains Conference 2022, hosted by Hayako. And we are very, very excited to get into our 3rd day. If you are just joining us today, you should know that we have recorded the sessions that we did on Wednesday and Thursday. All of these sessions are recorded and they will be posted on our website probably by the end of next week. So if you missed some of those, we encourage you to go back and take a look at them at your convenience. And that's the nice part about Hayako is this is essentially the YouTube of credit and collections. Is we want to make this information available to you so you can watch it, consume it at your leisure. So whether it's on a lunch break, whether it's at the end of the day, or you're sitting in your pool on the weekend and you keep yourself entertained by watching credit collection videos, we're here for you because we know how fun it is. So today we have a phenomenal panel. And before we get into our panelists, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Hayako. If you're new to Hayako, which I think we've got a lot of repeat visitors here today, but this is literally the first online repository of credit and collection training videos that I think exists anywhere. And 99.9% of these are actually free. So we are really excited about the content that we've created, and our goal is to make this information accessible to everyone. We've got over 150 courses, over, I think, 2,400 video snippets. We take all these programs and we divide it up into easily bite-sized consumable sessions of 2 to 5 minutes. We also purchased Credit Today about a year or 2 years ago, and we've been in the process of bringing all the Credit Today content, which is phenomenal, and we're bringing that into the Hayako platform. So it's not just videos, it's surveys, it's downloads, it's checklists, templates, all types of things that are incredibly useful in your day-to-day environment. So what we're launching today with this particular program, which is the Credit Captains Conference, is this is the next foray into getting a little bit more specific. So what we've done in the past is attend one of our sessions, whether it's live or online tutorial at your own self-paced process, is once you get to the end of these tutorials, we will actually issue a certificate of completion, which you can then load up to your LinkedIn profile, and it looks pretty nice. So this particular program, we are actually launching what is called a mini certification program. So it's a skills-based program. And essentially what this means is these sessions that we are doing this week, every session that we've had over the last couple of days, including today, they're free of charge. But we've also compiled some existing content that we had, and we've added some new content, some new variables, some assessments, a whole host of other things to essentially make a certification program. So we've got 3 certification programs that are out there. One is for UCC and secured transactions. One is for commercial credit laws. And today is actually part of our financial statement analysis of evaluating the customer. So today, this is going to be kind of the kickoff to this program. And the programs are actually pretty interesting. In addition to getting a certificate of completion, when you go through this program, you'll also get a certificate of achievement. And you'll see on the screen, we're also issuing these really cute little Hayako certification badges. And so that's another way to show to your boss, to your peers, to the industry that you take education, ongoing education and knowledge seriously. And they're great things to put on your LinkedIn profile, makes you look smart and engaged. And so we're really excited to be launching this program with this particular set of sessions that we've done this week. Actually, Bob Shultz is also on our call. And Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about what you put together, the work that was involved in the financial statement mini certification program?
Yeah, the difference between what we're doing and a lot of the things that are out there is this is real practical information to develop a skill in a specific area. And I know, having managed departments in the past, one of the difficult things is people have different levels of understanding of what their role is. And this is a great way for, if you're a manager, to train your people, maybe somebody new, somebody that has been doing a different thing, where you can really bootstrap your staff or yourself into having a knowledge of a particular skill that'll carry you forward in your career or develop your staff. And it's easy. That's the other thing. It's easy. It doesn't involve a lot of time by management. If you're taking these courses, you can do it at will, when it's convenient, at night, lunch, whatever. So that's good. And then having the badges is really something that demonstrates that you've gone through the hoops and you understand a specific skill. So I think that is quite valuable. The other part of this is, I've been involved in this since the Hayako started, and have developed a lot of the programs along with a lot of other practitioners. And at the end, there's a test. And let me tell you, I've been working on these tests. They're not easy. So you really need to know your stuff. When you get a certificate, you've really shown and demonstrated that you've taken the material and you understand it. So anyway, great offering for training of staff. Great offering if you just want to develop yourself into a promotion or another area of the quote to, as I call it, the quote to cash process.
Fantastic. And it is in depth. It really is a very good repository of information. There's multiple modules. There's a calculator. There's a template, 4 quizzes. Again, self-paced, so do it at your convenience. This is really exciting. So we're very interested to get our audience's feedback on these mini certification programs. So what we're also going to be doing is, at the end of this session, we're going to give you a discount code for 50% off. And we are certainly open to, if you like what you see and you've gone through it, looks good, and it's something that you want to offer your team, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to come up with some group discounts for you and group pricing, because the idea is to get as many people as we can to go through these things. They're pretty rock solid programs, and we're excited to have the knowledge base and the speakers that we have. I think you'll find them very, very helpful.
Michelle, can I say one more thing? If you go back and look at this slide,
yes,
this is an example of what we're trying to convey here. Our course is on financial statement analysis. It's not just what is a balance sheet, what is a P&L, what is a cash flow. It's what do you need to look for that isn't necessarily obvious. So it's from a practitioner's point of view of how to really understand what the financials are telling you and the story there. So I think what you'll find as you go through any of these courses, you're going to find good, practical, hands-on. How do I do my job in the most effective way? So anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're right. Okay, so today we already kind of talked about Bob Shultz, but I want to make sure that we introduce our panelists today. We are very, very excited to have Jeff Perlstein. He's coming to us from Berlin Packaging. He's got a long and illustrious career. Jeff, you want to just say a few words about kind of your past, your career, the companies you've been involved with, and the types of scenario, just to let our audience know kind of your wealth of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you having me on the panel today. I've been in credit and collections for about 25 years plus. with Berlin Packaging for going on 17 of those. Prior to Berlin, I worked for marketing companies, medical device companies. And what I would say is, we're a hybrid distributor model. And, my past life has kind of got me ready for Berlin Packaging. And what's been so exciting here is that we service so many different markets that, you learn how to shift in between different economic times or different shifts in markets. And it's a lot of pivoting, but it's been so amazing to watch the company grow and watch different industries grow. Everything that you see in retail stores, bottles, packaging, all of that, that's the business that we're in. So it's been really, really interesting. And again, I'm really excited to be on this panel with all of you today, and looking forward to a great discussion.
Fantastic. Bob, you want to give us a little recap of your illustrious career as well?
Yeah, I'm an old guy, everybody. And I started in what I call quote to cash, which I think is a very important concept. Started in the late 70s, actually. So I've been doing this for over 40 years. I've had various roles in multinational corporations, running credit and collections operations, and then as a consultant for a number of years. So it's really been wonderful. It's given me the opportunity to see a lot of different industries, different customer bases, different ways of running businesses, in different countries, et cetera, et cetera. And I personally, I think that credit management and all that is involved there is an incredibly interesting and valuable occupation. And so I've really learned a lot. I've been fortunate. And the objective now is to try to interact with people, pass some of that experience on, and for whatever it's worth. And it's been a very interesting career. And I would encourage anybody. Credit people tend to have a little bit of an inferiority complex sometimes. Don't. You're in an incredibly important role. So anyway, that's me.
Fantastic. Pam, give us a little bit of a recap of your great career too.
Well, I think you should be calling me Cynthia, since Cynthia's name is on that slide. I don't know who that is, but
Oops. Oh, oopsie. Sorry about that. That is actually, you're not Cynthia, you're Pam Krank. We just noticed that. Sorry about that.
No problem. I can attest that is indeed my picture. My name is Pam Krank, and I own a company called the Credit Department in St. Paul, Minnesota. We have about 30 people here who manage trade receivables all over the world. So we are credit managers, collection analysts, credit analysts, and deduction specialists here. And I think I've got more years than Bob. This is my 45th year of managing trade receivables.
Wow.
And I know, yes, I think I do beat Bob there. But
you win.
I win. Yeah, big deal, huh? I started in Fortune 100 company 3M. So just like Bob and Jeff, I have a variety of experiences in lots of different companies. I've worked for about 600 firms. I might have that might be a record for credit managers.
Yes, I think so.
I think it is, because I've been consulting for over 30 years. And we primarily manage trade receivables for mid-market manufacturers who manufacture in Asia for the most part and sell in North America. We're highly automated. I'm a huge fan of automation. And I'm excited to be here today.
Fantastic. We are absolutely thrilled to have the three of you engaged in this conversation. We're very excited. And what we're going to do, we're going to actually go into a whole list of questions that we got. And our goal is to kind of have this be very conversational. We've got some folks with incredible experience here. And so we've got a couple of questions teed up, and if we kind of veer off into some stories, we tend to get some really good response from that. So bear with us as we go through the questions and throw in a little bit of color around these. So the first question we have is really about collaboration, which was kind of the topic of this. In fact, the impetus for this particular session there was actually an article written today about a SWAT team approach, which was like, how do you get all these people in your organization to come together so your vision is the same and that you're all on the same page and you're working towards the same goal. So that was kind of the concept for this. And Pam, why don't you give us a kind of a start on this topic and just what your perspective, what you've seen, what you see has worked, has not worked. Go ahead and give us your thoughts.
Well, I think as credit managers, we earn our salaries based on managing high-risk customers, making the deals go. We automate the decisions that are the easy ones, the small ones, the low-risk accounts, but it's those high-risk customers where we spend the bulk of our time from a credit risk standpoint. And we do this in a fairly formal environment. We like to build credit committees with our clients, just like banks do, where we sit down. Now we don't sit down anymore together, but we go on a Zoom call and we talk about the high risk customers. So if we can take our customer base and talk about the lowest risk customers and then go all the way up to the highest risk customers, our clients, CFOs, want to say, where is my risk, and pinpoint that risk. So in our world, we have to be able to assign a score to a customer and look at the customers who are of high risk. And in credit committee, you have people from the executive team, so maybe the CEO, certainly the CFO, people from marketing and sales and operations. And together, you are making these decisions on what to do with these credits. So even if you have thousands of customers, some of our clients have 30, 40,000 customers. We're not having discussions every week on 30, 40,000 customers. We are just focused on those customers, usually the big ones, who are at higher risk of default, and how the entire team then is approaching that customer from a pricing standpoint, from a marketing offer standpoint, from terms, and what kind of information do we need from that customer. So I like to get that formal credit committee built so that we have buy-in. I'm not just making the rules on who's creditworthy and who's not. Together, we're building the policy, and then any company, any customer outside of that policy is brought to credit committee. That's our job in credit, to say, what does this team want to do? That's how we handle the high-risk customers.
Jeff, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, first, I would agree with everything that Pam said. Some of the things that have helped us, if I think back to, like I said, I'm going on 17 years here at Berlin. If I think back to when I started to where we are today, I think the first thing that I would say is the type of people that we work with. So the sales leadership, the operational leadership, right? You get that right person and it has the correct mindset. That's the first goal, is hiring the right people, right? Getting them aligned with the organization's goals. And many of the organizations that we've worked for, we currently work for, are sales driven, right? And so sometimes in credit, we feel that, sales is just going to make this decision, and therefore, like, how much say do I have in the matter here? And I think really, the things that has made me successful and my team successful is, first, building trust, right? If we don't build trust with our sales and operational leaders, then they're not going to want to listen to any of the recommendations or concerns that we have. Great example of, over the past few years, we've seen some big corporations file bankruptcy for financial reasons or for strategic reasons. And some of my credibility is now coming to light because I've been calling these things out for years on the watch list, right? And so the credibility is there. The second thing, I think, really is communicating. If you don't involve them in some of these decisions and get them involved, I like to refer to it as breaking down silos. Because if you have these silos up and everyone is doing their own work and their own thoughts in their own little area, it's never going to work. And so bringing them into the decision, hearing them out, listen, half the time we're not in front of customers. We're not at their facility. We're not seeing the operation, meeting the people. And so we do have to trust our sales team that they are, good judges of character and they're looking out for the right things. And so if we can do that and get that trust, break down the silos and bring everybody together, that's where I think you're going to start seeing a lot of wins for the company, right? You're gonna isolate some risk, and you're gonna celebrate those big wins. And so I think that's really where you start. And we particularly are talking about during an economic downturn. Well, having that trust and credibility, they're going to see, okay, this guy knows what we're talking about here. We should be looking out for X, Y, and Z.
Totally. Makes perfect sense. Bob, I know you have a couple thoughts to share on this
I'll
topic.
tell you, I think both you guys have nailed it. I was thinking as you were talking, Jeff, collaboration, in my view, actually has 3 points, because I was thinking, boy, you're stealing all my stuff, Jeff. Darn it.
I'm sorry.
Collaboration is trust, communication, and the other thing is understanding. And that may be something that as a credit manager, you want to make sure that your folks understand, what are the motives of sales? Why is the request coming in the way it is, and try to understand. And it works the other way, having sales understand what your objectives are. People are motivated by what their self-interest is. That's just the way human animals work. So what you want to do is to understand what is their interest in a situation, and how can you come to a mutual interest. The mutual interest is successful company, a company that doesn't have a lot of write-offs or delayed payments or disruptions in their cash flow that are destructive to the company. So being able to show and communicate to salespeople a bigger picture and how it's in their best interest to work with you, and the inverse as well. I think that's very important. And in my experience, in some companies, there's a lot of headwinds here. It depends on the culture of the company. You mentioned sales-oriented companies. Sometimes this is really difficult work because you really have to establish that kind of beachhead of trust and communication, and it's difficult, and it doesn't happen with a snap. So and it also the other thing is that a lot of it is driven by very senior management and what the culture of the company is. So as a as a credit professional, I think you really have to focus on rebuilding a culture so it's conducive to this type of collaboration. And it's hard in some companies, but I think those are the key elements.
Sometimes, Bob, we see the most successful companies with the collaboration bring in their salespeople to meet with credit. That's part of their orientation, is to understand what credit does and how important it is for sales to know that the sale isn't the sale until the money is in the bank. So we see that as a strategy that companies are using, and we love that. We love showing them what the tolerance is for risk and how we follow up on things. And so just that integration from the very beginning, I think, helps prevent a lot of misunderstandings down the line.
Yeah, have them understand what are your credit policies, why. And the opposite is true too, attending sales events, interact, having your department interact. We talked about this a little bit yesterday in a session, drive-alongs, customer visits, tag-alongs. All of these things build an understanding of one another and breaks down barriers. So there's some mechanical things you can do to really help develop this collaboration, and they're not that hard to do.
True.
And I think that totally leads into the next question here about building trust and how important that absolutely is. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on this topic? I'm sure you do.
Yes, I do, of course. I talked, in the last top question, I mentioned credibility, right? And what I always like to actually turn that. And I talk to my team about this all the time. And I think the first conversation that I had with them, I kind of got the, is this guy crazy or what's he thinking type of look. But I challenged all of them many years ago to think about what they want their brand to be, right? And what do you want your brand to be? Do you want to be known as somebody who is difficult to work with, who doesn't really think things through, who's not, thinking, about today, but also what's going to happen in 2 months from now, right? And being thoughtful about it. And so when I challenge them to think about what they want their brand to be, I told them what I want mine to be. I want to be easy to do business with. I want to be communicative. I want to join with them in our mutual goals, but I also want to, bridge the goals that we, don't see eye to eye on. And as we went down this process, one thing that we started to do is have monthly meetings with each of our business units and their leadership, right? And it's kind of an evolving thing, right? We've been doing it for over a year now, and it's really evolved quite a bit and kind of taken a bunch of different turns. But we would go through the importance of AR, right? And talk about their customers and their top 10 customers or past dues and, getting into inventory, right? Everything that surrounds that customer. But we didn't just say, hey, here's your list of customers and their AR, what are you going to do about it, right? We really kind of turned that information to how it impacts them. And how it impacts them is they own their P&L for their business unit, right? And we all can get into details about, DSOs and all of that stuff, but how does carrying AR or past due balances or bad debt, how does that impact their business? And quite frankly, their pocketbook. But at the same time, we want to be the positive voice. We don't want you to be surprised when you walk into a customer and get that brand new order that you've been working on, only to find that we can't process it because the customer is not in good standing. Mm-hmm. So if we try to be more proactive throughout the month, then walk through their results and actually work with them on goals of how to improve, that right there has set our brand and built the credibility, built the trust. And that is really how we're bringing things together between credit, sales, and different areas of the business, including legal.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love the way you phrase that it's your brand. It's what do you want to be known as? Because it sticks with you. And once you've established a brand, it's pretty hard to change it. So whether that's negative or positive, that can be a challenge. Pam, I feel like you have such an interesting situation with the fact that you're dealing with so many companies, and I'm guessing you must have like this whole, operating procedure manual about here's what you do, here's what is tried and true, especially regarding this. And how have you managed to do this with dealing with so many clients that you talk with? This is a big issue.
Well, some of them are great at it and very enthusiastic and happy to be involved, and others don't really care. They just want their money. So as Bob said earlier, it starts at the top, and the leadership team, they dictate the culture. And a lot of the companies we work in are very chaotic. They were built over acquisitions. So they have all these subcultures around the business that are in competition with each other. So we have to come in as the leaders and say, here's the way this is going to work. And then convince the CFO that here's the way this is going to work. And then bring in all of these subsidiaries and all of these new acquisitions to go right along this path. And it's not easy to do. They understand as things get better and a little less chaotic, you have some credibility with them. But it's not always a peachy situation there. A lot of companies will fight this. And they end up having those surprises that Jeff mentioned because you didn't pay attention to the pre-hold list that said, here are the customers who are going to go on hold this month because they have not paid you. You didn't pay any attention to that email. So when you did walk in that customer and they said, I can't believe your credit department has my account on hold, That's on sales for not being able to follow the process that we build to say, we're giving you a heads up. Please get involved if you know there's a problem here. If you want more details, we're here to help you. But they have to be willing, and their leadership has to be willing to do that. And sometimes there's just so much turnover in sales that they aren't there long enough to be there when there's a problem with the account. So it's easier when there's more of a steady business where you don't have all of this chaos. But sadly enough, we work in very chaotic companies usually.
Yeah, I think it's the great point, and kind of slides into our next topic here on goals. And, especially your situation, Pam, where you've got all these clients that you're dealing with, and they've all got different goals. None of them are consistent, and that changes based on turnover, et cetera. And Bob, I know you always have a lot of thoughts on goal setting and planning. This is one of my favorite topics that I hear you talk about. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I want to kind of span the last question in this. That you've heard the term follow the money. Bonus structures are very important. And so when you're trying to motivate somebody, particularly at a senior level and on a commission structure, I've seen situations where you can build in common goals that incorporate things that are important to you in accounts receivable. And guess what? Suddenly there's an interest. So I would encourage people to take a look at how the commissions are structured and how the bonuses are structured at a higher level, and advocate for incorporating some of your goals into those things. And that is very helpful if you can get it done. And the goals, here's my view of goal setting. It's very easy to say, we're going to have a DSO goal, we're going to do this, whatever. Take a look at what your company's goals are and start from there. What's the cash forecast? What's the sales forecast? Look at your cash conversion cycle. What are the goals for your cash conversion cycle? And so now when you're setting goals for your team, you say, you know what, we got to do faster credit reviews. We got to set some parameters on how long it's going to take for a credit review to be received, all the documentation there, and we're going to do it, and we're going to turn around. Because guess what? There's a sales forecast that, depending on shipping to a particular customer, they're waiting for your approval. Maybe they've ordered inventory and it's in WIP, or it's an inventory waiting to be shipped, and they're trying to meet a sales forecast. So your logistics people are involved. And then credit holds, on and off credit holds, application of cash, all of these things that are fundamental processes in your department, they impact all kinds of stakeholders. And I think you have internal customers and external customers, and they're all impacted by how you operate your department. So take a look at kind of a broader view than just the basics in terms of your metrics, and set metrics that are helpful to the entire operation. That's why my mantra is quotation to cash. Make sure when a quote comes in, maybe you pre-approved accounts, so that when the salesperson creates a quote and they know there's going to be requirements for security or a guarantee, that's part of their quotation process. Understand, in some companies, the operation is very complex, and the quotation needs to be doable from an administrative standpoint. And then you go through the whole process. So again, it's very important that you set your metrics in line with that entire process, and serve your company, not just your particular department, and then incorporate your goals into other stakeholders' goals as well.
Makes sense. Jeff?
Yeah, Bob, I love what you said, follow the money. And as you said that, I started to think about, okay, which direction am I following? Because there's like 5 different paths of the money that I can go down, right?
Right.
But it makes so much sense. And really, it's true, because, I think about, our sales team's comp structure, right? So I'm privy to that. And I work with them on it. And I incentivize them to be part of the AR collection process and AR health. And it's not because I want to meet my goals, right? If we all meet, if we just collect the money, we each meet our goal. They get paid their commission. I have good KPIs. The company has strong cash flow. Life is good, right? And so, you let them know that if there's an incentive where they may not get their commission after a certain period of time, work with them. Don't, I like to think of myself as a pretty fair guy most of the time. And I always tell my salespeople, if you're going to call me on the day before you're set to lose commission and say, hey, what do I need to do? I don't know how flexible I'm going to be with that. But if I know that you were really instrumental and you worked with the team and you're the one that really helped get us paid, your efforts, yeah, I will work with you to get you your commission. And so that's, on the sales side of it. But, we're going through our, budget season right now, like a lot of people are. And I was just having this conversation with my team yesterday because, there's a lot of things that we can control and a lot of things that we can't control, right? And so this year, I'm really trying to change things on how we do our planning. And this year, as we go and set our goals for the business, I really started bringing the team involved and got them involved because, if I'm going to hold them accountable throughout the year, then they should have a say in the matter of their goals, right? And again, every company is going to do things differently depending on comp and individual goals and all of that stuff. And everyone's got to do what's right for them. For my team, I made them they were all at first kind of panicking, like, whoa, we're implementing goals, individual goals. What is this? And I started it off with, guys, there's a lot of things in here that we can and can't control, but we need a starting point. But let me start with no one's losing their jobs if you don't hit your KPIs, right? Because what we're going to start doing is we're going to start evaluating why are we missing the KPIs and how do we get better? Are we, quite frankly, it's going to open our eyes. Are we setting the KPIs properly?
Mm-hmm.
So I think having all of those conversations and going back to what Bob said, follow the money. What are the company's goals? How do we need to position this? Are we setting the right goals? Do we have the team involved in setting those goals? And how are we going to execute on those goals? I found that over the past year and a half to be extremely successful. And I just got off a meeting with my team yesterday, and I think we spent 10 minutes with each of them going around saying how enlightening and that was and how they felt so happy to be a part of the process this year. So I felt really good about that.
Nice. That's a great way to do it. Pam, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we always have an action plan for every department that we lead because we have so many issues, excuse me, to resolve. And the action plan says, here's what the issue is, here's who is responsible for fixing it, and here's the timeline of that issue. So we work off action plans in our weekly meetings that we have with these teams. And our goal setting is really based on what kind of resources are available and what are we measuring already. The most important measurement we have is our activity reports. It says, what did you do this week? How many files did you work? Which accounts did you work? And we can see that reflecting in the receivables themselves and the results that we get. So our goals are really focused on what we consider coverage. How much of the past due was covered this week? And that's especially true when we start with new clients, is to get them to understand the more active we are with these customers, the more likely we're going to get you paid. So we're setting these goals, and then we look at what are we missing. When Bob was talking about cash flow goals, our clients want daily cash flow forecasts. How much money are we going to get in today compared to Monday and Tuesday? You have to have extremely accurate data in order to set cash flow forecasts. So we look at which companies have good forecasts and which ones don't. Most of them do not. But in our world, it's a little bit different because we play the whack-a-mole game, where you hit one down and you got that, and then another one pops up and you got to hit that one down and another one pops up. That's our world in a nutshell. So we are always in this mode of what has the highest priority, what's on our action plan first, what can we automate, and what processes can we improve upon in the credit area? For example, when we get an application, we always give pre-approvals. We will tell sales what we can pre-approve them on based on the scores that we get, the information we get before the bank information, which helps us set the final line. So these pre-approvals give sales permission to start the sales process. And maybe we can't hit the 50,000 they want right now, but we can approve for 25, get that first order out the door. So we've learned by having sales tell us how terrible we are at certain things, or maybe the previous credit manager, hey, it takes forever for you to get an approval done. Well, you know what? I'm sorry, but I don't work at Wells Fargo. I can't push these bank references through. However, we can give you these pre-approvals. So that solved a whole bunch of problems with sales thinking that we were taking too long to approve. So I think the action plans for us are very live. We work them every week, and we always are working on what's next to help set those goals for action.
Michelle, can I pipe in here a little bit before you go? Can you go back?
Absolutely.
One of the frustrations of a session like this is none of these questions is mutually exclusive. They're all interrelated. You talk about, salespeople are generally coin operated. So when you're setting goals and you're trying to incorporate your objectives into theirs as part of their commission, that's motivational to them. Customers and customer service that we talked about a few minutes ago is very important here. Goals for your department shouldn't just be related to the typical AR turnover type of thing. For example, in many companies, they have huge dispute and deduction problems. So if you set an aggressive goal to improve the turnaround of resolving those things, that involves a number of different stakeholders to make that happen. So you can see how it kind of creates the need for cooperation among different stakeholders. It also drastically impacts one of the primary customer-facing processes in your company. That's you. Credit and collections is a primary customer-facing process. And customer-facing processes drive customer loyalty. So I used to go around to major accounts, do a lot of customer visits, and I always did mirror, mirror on the wall. How do I compare to my competitors in this, and this? And it was very instructive because you see, okay, wow, we're really falling down. And you can go back and you can set goals to make improvements in those things. And then that's when you bring a team of people in who are in different departments. Here's the problem. How are we going to fix this? How do we make this more streamlined? How do we automate this? How do we add accountability to this and streamline and speed up the whole process? Because it affects everything. It affects your costs. It affects your cash flow. It affects your customer relationships, and it affects your collaboration and trust among various stakeholders. So I would really encourage people, when you're setting goals, think more broadly. It's not just collection effectiveness index, DSO, average days past due, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of other things that can help you really drive the ship.
Great points. I think you're absolutely right. So how do you drive a successful team? This is a good question, and I think the answer to this is pretty obvious on this particular slide. All of these things are important, and so maybe if each of you can kind of give your 2 cents on, maybe ranking these, or if you've got a story that relates to, one of these was a good focus, but we fell down on this other category and it obliterated the success on the first topic. Jeff, let's start it with you.
Yeah, I think the obvious one is 7, all the above. At least from my perspective, it is. And each one of them, I think they're equally as important, not all of them, just for different scenarios, right? I talked earlier about my brand, right? Well, this is really everything that goes into it. I want my communication, right? So if I'm not giving the salespeople or the sales leadership or my customers, if I'm not communicating with them about what's going on, what everyone's needs are, something's going to fail, right? I really like in here, I mean, one of the things that I don't see a lot of this list is the meeting management. And I think that's internal and external, right? And some, examples are, someone said earlier that salespeople in some organizations, they turn real fast. And so that salesperson's not really there, right? Luckily for me, my experience that, we don't have that level. So, I've been with my salespeople for a really long time in many cases. But what I have, and I just had this conversation with someone earlier on my team, is link up this person with the sales manager. I want that person, that credit analyst, not a credit manager, my credit analyst who's handling the day-to-day, I want them to have a direct one-on-one relationship with the sales manager. And the reason for that is, one, if that salesperson is no longer there, now you've got someone to go to. Two, if you have a dispute with that particular salesperson, right, obviously the sales manager is going to be the next person who comes in. And you want to have that credibility, you want to have that relationship, that trust directly with that person, so that you understand that, and they understand that you actually are right. Your concern is valid, and so that they can steer the ship properly, and kind of redirect the salesperson themselves, right? But it's also from the customer level too. Don't just, obviously you're dealing day to day with the accounts payable or that level, but get in with the CFO if you can. Get in with the controller. Quite frankly, get in with the supply chain manager. These are all people that you directly affect. And one day you're going to have to connect with them, whether it be good or bad news. And if you don't have that line to them when something comes up, you're going to have a much harder time. And vice versa. If they have that trust in you, when things start to go south, who are they going to call? Are they going to call the person that they've never talked to before and try to explain what's going on with them? Or are you going to be prioritized in that call?
Yeah, great points. Absolutely. Pam?
Well, I think the feedback is what helps us in our process work. We do a lot of process building because then that drives what we turn into automation. And so much of the time, if we build this just ourselves in finance or in credit, we can't get everybody else to agree to this. Like Bob's saying about deductions, we manage hundreds of thousands of deductions, and that's done mostly with automation, but we still have to have those meetings where we can't get past a certain point. And we need to hear from the stakeholders in customer service, in the shipping department, in marketing, about from their viewpoint, what they're seeing from the customer's view of what's going on with this process. And so we have to ask for constant feedback about what they're hearing out in the field, what is coming up in the new contracts, what kinds of things are happening so that we can adjust our processes. And that's true for conflict resolution too. We don't get our salespeople involved. We don't send them agings to say, here's what your customers are. We find they don't look at any of that stuff. What we do is we get them involved when we need them involved. We get them involved when we see the early signs of a problem. We see that they told the customer something differently than what was billed. So it's a very specific process when sales gets involved or when customer service gets involved. We have a new client and I met with their VPs of sales earlier this week. And I said, well, explain to me your involvement in collecting with a department that's now being displaced. And she said, well, I'll tell you what they did is they sent me a list of customers and said, call these customers, they're past due. I said, well, what is the credit department doing? If they're telling the salespeople to make the calls, she said, that's exactly what I thought. Why am I making collection calls?
Wow.
So, that's crazy to me that you would expect sales to jump in and make a collection call. It's a good way to lose your salespeople too.
Yeah,
But what did they do
absolutely.
in that case? Yeah, they ignored them. So nothing got called. It was one of the first credit departments I've ever seen. Nobody makes a collection call.
Nobody did it.
Nobody did anything. I said, I can automate everything you're doing. You're sending statements and letters. I can automate all of that. I need you on the phone, finding
Yeah.
out who's actually involved and how do we resolve this. So we
Yeah.
use that feedback, that conflict resolution to know which departments to use when, and we use swim lanes in our software that will design who's involved in what processes. So you're using them sparingly in the terms of collections, but you're using them where you need them. And you can get a simple program like Visio and do the design yourselves.
Sure.
And do it with salespeople.
Doing it with them, exactly. And I know Bob has a lot of thoughts about this, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move to the next slide because if we have any time at the end, we can go back and talk about this because it kind of goes into the next category, conflict resolution that you just talked about. That's such an important aspect. Okay, Bob, we'll get your thoughts on this slide, conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution. Well, obviously, it's important for anybody in a business function to not take conflict personally. That's the first thing. You're in a business role. You're not fighting it out in a back alley. And I think yesterday we talked about this a little bit. And the first thing is where you're working at cross purposes with another stakeholder, whether it's sales or somebody else. Why is there a conflict? Because you have differing opinions. So the first thing is to ask, why do you feel the way you feel? And how are we going to resolve this? And to avoid a real confrontation. I mean, the whole point is cooperation and doing what's best for your team and your company. So I think that's where it starts, is just having an expectation of your staff that they are going to react in a professional manner when these kinds of things come up. Going back to the last slide, I think all 10 were good, but this ties into one of the last ones, business acumen. Having people, and that's a really important term that I don't think people use very often. Business acumen is understanding what's important in a well-run business. What is business? So if you look at it from that point of view, and you look at it from trying to work with the other person to resolve issues without getting into, I've been in things where I've had customer service and credit get into a room, and the customer service manager and the credit manager literally stood up at opposite sides of the table and screamed at one another.
Oh my
and
gosh.
It took us, oh yeah, I mean, it was very ugly. And it took us 2 or 3 meetings to gain that kind of, trust and communication, so that it wasn't just a bare knuckled fight. Anyway, that's my view. I'd be interested to hear what the others have to say, because we've all been through this.
Yeah, so true. Jeff, any thoughts back on the conflict resolution?
Yeah, I think my biggest one, and it kind of came up on me yesterday. I think in credit, right? I think we're just kind of, our brains are trained to say, we can't do this because we're panicked about the risk, right? And even though we're probably right in that comment, salespeople, nobody wants to hear we can't do it right out of the gate, right? So I had to catch myself right before I said that, because I was even like, this doesn't even make sense to do this. What are we doing? And so when you kind of think about that, right, forget about the resolution. If you can just kind of squash the conflict right off the bat without using, terminology that might set somebody off as best as you can, and really kind of understand where they're coming from and make them feel heard. I know I'm kind of being obvious here. It just kind of stood up to me yesterday when I was in the same situation and had to catch myself. And it could have gone much differently had I just come out of the gate and been like, no, we're not doing it. Doesn't make sense.
What are the things we agree on? Focus on that first.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Absolutely. So we have one question left, and it looks like we have somebody who wants to ask a question too. So we're going to get through this last question because this is always a doozy, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. So regarding sales, this is a huge aspect we've already kind of talked about is how do you take these risks into successful sales opportunities? Jeff, you got some thoughts on that?
I do. We just got done talking about what the most important things were. I'm going to flip a little bit. I'm going to go to communication on this one.
Sure.
Because if you're not communicating, like, for example, if I'm not communicating to my supply chain about what I'm seeing in a particular market or some of the big public company players in that market, right? If I'm not communicating those things to them, they're not going to be able to take that knowledge and say, wow, this really large company is experiencing these problems during this inflation period, recession. Well, how is that going to affect my mid-sized customer, my small customer, right? And start thinking about what I like to give them is EWI, an early warning indicator, right? I share this early warning indicator list with them all the time, and they use it, and they call me and say, oh my God, I see what's going on in this, there's happening in this customer. I see it on your list. What do I do? That's a success right there because we communicated. And if we're able to mitigate it, we're going to.
Good point. Pam.
Yeah, I think we have to be flexible in terms of what that risk really is. In our world, we do the risk of default, which is a straight up percentage for us, and the risk of slow pay. And you have to look at what the tolerance is going to be for the company if we're going into a recession and you have free credit, which a lot of us manufacturers do, right? We don't service charge past dues. What is it that you can do in order to get the deal done that makes you comfortable with that risk? And some of the things we've already been doing are things like splitting orders. We say, okay, I know you want to ship 100,000 this month, so you meet your quota, but we are comfortable with 35,000. And that customer pays that, we'll ship the next 35,000 in 30 days. And we're already looking at opportunities to limit our risk of financial risk, but still do the deal. I talked about this in the security panel, is we're doing a lot of unlimited credits with pre-lien notifications in our construction businesses. And so that we're not so concerned about how much credit, as long as we know where the product is going and that we're following the lien instructions to make sure that we are secured. New accounts, some of our clients in our our low margin businesses, like our commodities, they are now moving to standby letters of credit, which we have not used in years.
Really?
To set up new customers, because it's just a standby. So if they don't get paid, they can cash that in with a customer's bank. And they're much more comfortable doing this because they know they're going to get paid. But of course, the standby also allows the customer to establish credit with us by paying us on time. So we're seeing that old trick pulled out of the hat, so that they can start doing business with new customers without worrying that these businesses who are fairly new, less than a couple of years, can still buy on credit from them. So I've been surprised how many standbys we've been negotiating recently, and some of our clients are even paying the fees. So
really,
the suppliers are paying the fees for the customers to get them started. We have not used standbys this heavily for about 10 years. So we go through the cycles, as Bob knows, we go through these cycles over and over again when companies get into very heavy debt, like many of them are now, with their debt having been so cheap. And now how do we work through that? So I do think that we have to be aware of those financial risks, and they need to bubble up. That's why we like our credit committees, so that those issues bubble to the top and we can all have these discussions about, like Jeff said, he knew these things were brewing. He's been sending out the warning signals That's our job in credit, is to warn of these possible things happening. Then we get to the how are we going to mitigate that risk. So we're seeing a lot of security. We're doing the standbys. We're tying some assets up for clients where if they get behind and they want to sign a note, we're assigning it to mortgages now. We have some very inventive ways of getting paid and being secured. And we're turning to a lot of that security right now that we have not used for a while.
That's amazing. You know, we were talking on one of the other sessions how that if you've been in credit for 20, 30, 40 years, you've seen all these recessions, the boom and the bust multiple times. Like, you know, remember the first Black Monday? That was like late 80s. And so having seen these cycles over the decades, those of us who are, you know, mature credit analysts, it's like, okay, we know what to do. We've already been here, done that. But some of the folks that are kind of newer, this is their first recession. This is their first foray into this. It's scary. And, you know, Bob, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'd love to just get your perspective on this question here.
And we don't have a lot of time, but I think Pam and Jeff have really hit the high points. The key is to have arrows in your quiver, to have different things on the shelf that you can do to securitize whatever. The other thing I would add, and this is going to sound like a heresy to every credit person listening, but don't be 100% risk adverse. Risk is okay, because what happens is you take risk with a portfolio of customers that aren't deal breakers for your, they're not, you know, if any one of them goes under, it's not a destructive event to your company's operation. So I in the past, you know, you set up a reserve and you take chances with companies. And what you'll find is that most of the companies you do that with are going to be sustainable. And occasionally you'll write one off and you just watch them very closely. But that's another way in terms of helping salespeople through this is, guess what? We're going to take some risk. We're staged for it. If it's material, I've got some securitization options, and we're going to work with you as best we can. And every once in a while, there's a dog that's so bad. Hey, you know, you've built some credibility with them. You've shown them that you're trying to help, but this is a non-starter, and here's why. So that's how I view this.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, you know, from a sales standpoint, I've been in sales for a lot of my career about credit collections, but always related to that aspect. And I think the credit department can often underestimate the ego and the self-esteem that a salesperson has about bringing these deals in. And it's one thing to snag a big deal or sign up a big customer, but when you start to understand that maybe you just got this big deal, but this customer is one of your least profitable customers, it's like a stab in the heart to a sales rep to realize, what, I'm closing these deals and they're not even profitable. And I think that is one area that if we can, you know, share more of, you know, how which customers are profitable, which customers, yeah, we get paid, but we use so many of our resources to get that bill in the door. When you start to pull your sales reps into showing those profitability metrics and the work that's involved, you know, I think there's no salesperson that isn't impacted by that, because it's almost like their reputation at stake. So I think that's another kind of opportunity to pull the salespeople in to really show them, you know, we want to go after good business that's profitable. And I think that's a pretty easy thing for a salesperson to get on board with.
I hope that the other two folks agree with me, but I've always followed the mantra, high profit, more risk, low profit, less risk.
That's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sounds great. Okay, looks like we are kind of at the end of our session here, and it looks like we've pretty much answered, I think, everything that came in. And looks like I don't know if we have any other questions that have come in from LinkedIn. So it looks like we're going to just wrap it up, or we're actually going to be just a few minutes over. But we'll leave it open. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat box. And as we mentioned before earlier, when we launched this meeting today, we are having the mini certification program. And this is your discount code, FSA50. This actually will take 50% off your program. And this is a really interesting program that we think that you'll get a lot out of, you and your teams. So we encourage you to check that out and take a look at that. see what's involved in that. Some good stuff, and this is kind of the kickoff session for that particular moment. So it looks like I think we answered everything that came in, and just want to remind everybody that we've got one more session today coming up at 2:00 Central. We have the Journey to the Top with some fascinating ladies that are going to talk about what they've been through and how they've achieved success. And I think that wraps it up. And I'm going to just throw it out to you, Jeff and Pam and Bob, each of you, if you just have any closing comments kind of on this topic, just a minute or two. Jeff, any kind of closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think this was a great discussion. Thank you again for having me on the panel. In fact, I've actually taken away a few things from this conversation. So, really appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Great. Pam?
I think our job is to mitigate the risk, but take the risk. And if you say no every single time, we don't need you. You aren't necessary as a credit manager. They would just put everybody on no credit. So
Yep.
We have to be educated about all the alternatives. It can't be just those of us who've been around for decades. If you're newer to credit, you really need to go out and educate yourself on how to secure some of these deals, how to make them happen, and ask the salespeople, get the feedback that you need. So you've got the action plan on what you're currently not doing that will help you through these tougher times that we're going to see here in the next couple of quarters.
Great. And Bob?
I've really enjoyed this mind meld with these two wonderful people. It's been a great experience, but I have a question for you, Michelle. When do we get promoted from captain to colonel? I want to know.
That'll be in January. Hang tight.
Okay. Terrific.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And again, we will have the recording of this session and all the other sessions that we've done this week, including the one in a couple hours. It'll be posted on our website by the end of next week. You'll get an email. And if you couldn't attend all the sessions, they will be there for you to view at your convenience, at your leisure. And don't forget, when you're looking for resources, you're looking for information, it's tough to get out of the office. We get it. That's why Hayako Academy is in play. We encourage you, go there, check things out. It's a great resource. And we've got folks like Jeff and Pam and Bob that have contributed to this. And we're very, very excited for what's to come. And thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.